Okay. It turned out he had a throne room. Well, an audience chamber, but the chair, even larger and more obscenely carved than the smoldering one in his workshop, looked awfully throne-like. I had a drink. Oh, there it is. Throne-like. He didn't know how he could possibly use the thing frequently enough to justify its existence, not as the ruler of a tiny village who conducted most of his business via magic mirror. But he really should have expected it by now. I've got quite a lot of shade and stuff happening here, don't I? I didn't quite expect that. I could sit up. I can sit up and read. All right, let's try this. I'm going to still look down because the book is down. Throne-like. A brown-skinned woman in gray homespun, with hundreds of tiny gray braids coiled about her ears, knelt with her forehead touching the floor. His knees twinged just looking at her. He didn't know how long she had knelt there, but he wouldn't have had her wait in the audience chamber if he'd realized how she intended to spend the time. He glanced at the guards, curious to see if they had forced her into it. One diligently dug a finger into an ear canal, hoping to find gold where brains should have been. The other was staring nearly cross-eyed at a fly on his warty green nose. He crossed the room as quickly as he could and sat. "Rise." She straightened slowly, but not as painfully as he had expected. Maybe she practiced. Maybe he should have all older people practice laying in unnatural poses to improve their general flexibility. It's called Pilates. "Dread Lord," she began, looking him straight in the eye. Relatively few people did that. The goblins looked at their feet. Serico's eyes slid sideways. Zerakonar had barely deigned to look at him. Princess Alicia did, in flashes, when she wanted to make a point, but otherwise avoided looking at him full in the face. He liked this one. He wished he knew her name. "We cannot pay the tribute in full this year," she said. She raised her chin, daring him to do something about it. Despite her threadbare clothes, this woman carried herself with every bit as much dignity as the princess. That she had been willing to abase herself said something. He had pictured nobility as sneering, but this woman quietly divorced the word from anything to do with gentle birth. "Go on," he said, in as neutral a voice as he could manage. "The rains came late and the harvest failed," she continued. "An excuse?" "No, my lord. Merely an explanation. I take full responsibility." "For the rains?" He raised an eyebrow. "For the lack of harvest." "So you went out and killed all the plants?" "No," she startled. "No, my lord." "You failed personally to bring the crops in, then?" "No, my lord. I couldn't possibly bring them all in myself." "Then who brought them in?" "The farmers, my lord." So the rain ruined the crops, and the farmers were the ones who harvested what was left. And exactly how is any of this your responsibility again? Some of the wind had left her sails. Her plan to martyr herself had hit a shoal. "Because I am the mayor, my lord." "And how long have you been the mayor again?" "A Terwin has been mayor for 5 generations, my lord," she said cautiously. Oh, I didn't say it cautiously. I was rather proud of that. She found herself back on familiar ground, but unexpectedly. "And you personally?" "Since my father's death 12 winters ago." See, he really wanted to get up and pace. The chair had been built entirely for looks, and the carvings in the arms and the back included a number of pokey bits. But he didn't want to lose the position of superiority, not when he was about to deviate so far from the script. A keen intelligence lurked in her eyes, and he needed to stay on top of this situation. If the village turned against him, he could fry them all, but he couldn't actually make them supply him with edible food. "Tell me, Mayor Terwin, Is there anything that actually did well this season? She paused and thought, well, we had a bumper crop of garlic. Garlic? Garlic, she confirmed. I don't suppose you have you're planning on invading any vampires' domains or inviting any to dinner, my lord? No, I'll admit I had no vampire-related plans in mind, he said. At least he hoped he didn't. But I don't particularly want to eat nothing but garlic for the next 6 months, and I doubt you do either. Yes, my lord. He drummed his fingers on the chair arm. Indulge me for a moment. A simple exercise. Her whole body grew rigid, no doubt picturing the horrible death that would shortly commence. If you were me, what would you do at this point? He asked, genuinely curious. Make the rains come on time, she said automatically. Well, that would have been a good idea. Why hadn't he done it? General evilness? He thought about it for a moment and realized he already knew the answer. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Yes, I suppose that would have helped. But that would require weather magic, which only ever lasts in the short run and then causes a giant mess. And time magic, which, to my knowledge, no one has actually made work. At least made work without truly terrifying and horrific repercussions, and that's coming from me. She paused, surprised not to have been reduced to a greasy smear on the floor, and thought, turn the garlic into something else? Wheat or potatoes, maybe? Well, that's a thought. He ran through what he knew of transmutation spells. I'm not sure it would stick and still be edible. Besides, I'm guessing an enormous harvest of garlic is still, pound for pound, rather less than a bumper crop of wheat. She shook her head. But now she looked like she was thinking about it rather than bracing for death. All right, let's try a different angle. If, suddenly, I were to disappear, with the rest of the castle, say, so you just had a village and a pile of garlic, what would you do to get through the winter? Terwin's eyes left his, focusing somewhere off to the distance, as she thought. I suppose we could hold a garlic festival. If we had enough travelers come through, we might be able to bring in coin enough to scrape through the winter. A garlic festival. Well, that one certainly did not come from the Dark Wizard's repertoire. There was a certain appeal, though, namely, the lack of depopulating the village and having no one to plant next year's fields. The village is awfully dingy, though. She glanced at him again, quickly. You've preferred to keep people indoors as much as possible. Yes, well, now that was embarrassing. Of course it was his fault. I'm reconsidering. What do you think you could pull together in a week? A week? She stared at him. You're not serious. I don't want to eat nothing but garlic all winter, he repeated, and I am tired of my domain looking like the poorest town in the realm. I see. She looked gobsmacked. He wished some of her fellow villagers could see her. He doubted they'd often get the opportunity. It's very little time. It's very little time until the roads start getting too muddy and miserable for people to travel, he said briskly. So, if you would like to live through the winter, I suggest you get moving. Oh, dear. There's so much to do. I have to, if it pleases my lord. The fatalism disappeared from her face, burned off by twin fires of hope and total panic. Go, he waved. I'll want a report tomorrow. She nodded, her eyes darting as her mind churned through sudden to-do lists. She backed her way out of the door, the goblins only realizing something had happened and startling to attention as she neared them. They looked at him in confusion, not having expected her to remove herself under her own power. Well, that would shake things up a bit. Why had no one told him being good would be so easy?